Hi friends, welcome. It is Inside James here with you today, and I want to share with you some COVID-19 related street photos. And to do that, I want to share with you an article that my mom sent me, interestingly enough. She's always got my back. Thank you, Mom. Of very compelling photos that were taken during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is currently still in full effect as of recording this video. I will put a link to this Flipboard article below. It is called Adjusting to the New Normal in Pictures. And let's begin, shall we? Subway customers wait in an empty underground hall for their trains in Munich. This photo was taken by Matthias Schrader. I love the sense of symmetry in this photo. And this is something that you're going to see throughout these photos pervasively. The power of symmetry and the power of creating an aesthetic pull in your images to help tell a story. Another thing you're going to see pervasively in these photos is the use of a wide angle. It's particularly useful for the subject matter of these photos because we're dealing with public spaces that would normally be full of people, and places like train stations are uniquely full of people. We see the photographers utilizing wide angles in order to show the emptiness, show the lack thereof of what would normally be people. On to the next photo. A musician plays violin as he waits for the last train before metro shutdown at Zoloty Vorota station in Kiev. This was taken by Valentin Orinko. Once again, we have symmetry here, but we also have asymmetrical parts of the frame. But because of the symmetry, it has a charmingly imperfect quality to it. A good example of an asymmetrical element in the frame is the chandeliers. Once again, the use of a wide angle. I love the way it's utilized here with a subframing element being an arch. Another thing about this photo is it puts on display the human spirit. If you hear that, that's my neighbor. My neighbors are horses. There's something about the human spirit on display here with a single person with a violin playing in a station during a pandemic. In the next one, a man walks with his luggage through a railway station in Antwerp, Belgium. I cannot pronounce the photographer's name, I apologize. A wide angle, almost perfectly symmetrical shot once again. The wide angle is incredibly important for these photos. It gives them so much strength, but we'll also see in some coming photos how a tighter angle, getting some detail shots, can be very useful as well. This is a great shot. This is a good street shot. We have leading lines that are creating pleasing pathways for our eyes to follow. The guy is centered, which is also pleasing to us. And then the area that is designed to be full of people has no people. All of this infrastructure on display here that was kept in the image in this case is useful because it shows that this is an enormous train station. It's designed to have heavy foot traffic, yet we have one person with his luggage and another person sitting on a bench, maybe one or two other people sprinkled around. It's bizarre. It subverts our expectations, and that gives the photo power. It really accentuates the weirdness of the time that we're in. Another little detail about this photo that I enjoy is that we are far from the subject. Not only is the subject far from other people in the frame, we're far from the subject. We're distanced as well. In the next one, we have a volunteer at a coronavirus testing center at the Kuwait International Fairgrounds in Mishref. This photo is taken by Stephanie Mickey. Now we're getting into some more photojournalistic stuff, and we'll teeter back and forth on the line of street photography and photojournalism. But street photography is kind of photojournalism in a way. So I'm going to sneak in some photojournalistic shots into this video. Symmetry, wide angle, also patterns and repetition here with all of these chairs. You also see the distance between the chairs. Why are they so far apart? Well, we would put them much closer so that we could fit more people in here. But the problem is we don't want people getting sick. It's powerful imagery. The sheer amount of chairs, the endless grid demonstrates the size of the problem we have here. Another thing that I find interesting about this photo is the hand gesture. I don't know exactly why they have their hand up like that. It's mysterious, but it's also startling. Next, we have our first long focal length photo as the sun shines beautifully upon the left side of my face. Lori Kuipers, a registered nurse, reaches into a car to take a nasopharyngeal swab from a patient at a drive-through COVID-19 testing station in Seattle. Photo by Elaine Thompson. Now, this longer focal length, we're getting into the details, and there's loads of context here. We have a car on the right-hand side. The arm is reaching into the car. We don't know what's happening inside the car. There's some mystery there. We have the package for the swab in the nurse's hand, which is a little detail that could easily not be in this photo, and the photo would be a little bit less strong. We have the nurse wearing full gear, including a face shield, like a motorcycle windshield. It's a very bizarre and startling photo with her performing a medical operation to somebody who's sitting in a car. This photo is very well done. Good job, Elaine. And this video is getting more cinematic by the moment. Next, a man wearing an old military gas mask rides the subway in Prague. Photo by Peter David Josic. I quite enjoy this shot. This would be a good day on a photo walk for me. We have symmetry. We have a strong leading line that pulls you all the way down to the back of the train, the door in the center there. We have use of the color red repeated, and then also the chairs themselves kind of repeated throughout the cabin of the train. It's a very wild photo. It's not normal to see somebody with a gas mask on. The photographer in this case could have, I just realized this, I'm getting very excited. The photographer could have pointed the camera at the person and put the person in the center of the frame, or even maybe looked out the window perhaps, but instead the photographer decided, I'm going to use the cabin to make this photo more interesting. I'm going to intentionally frame up my shot to make this photo have more power. This is super thoughtful, and it makes my toes giddy. Another thing I find interesting about this photo is it demonstrates that history repeats itself. This is something that you might see in the past in times of war. It's happening again, but for a different reason. I could take this thing in the Lightroom, make it black and white, and tell somebody it was taken in the 1700s, and they wouldn't know. They'd be like, whoa. Park taxis at Miami International Airport as the tourism industry is curtailed by the spread of coronavirus. Taken by Carlos Barria. Tons of useful context in this photo, and this is context that is not always easy to make happen. This idea of stacking the taxis in front of the planes in the airport. Not to mention the trees that are forming a subframing element around the bottom of the frame. And the cherry on top, we have 3 planes, the rule of odds at play here. A less talented photographer may not have been able to put together a composition like this. This is a very thoughtful photo. Another thing is, it's powerful to see such a huge display of differentness. A small display of differentness that is powerful but small is a single doctor giving somebody a test in their car. This is a huge display on a vast level. It demonstrates how big of a problem this is, but it doesn't tell the person to think that it is a big problem. It gives them the information and lets them decide on their own if it is a big problem or not. Power of photography. Rick Hatfield, 73, walks with his mother, Marie Rossi, 93, as voters cast their ballots in the Democratic primary Tuesday in the Villages, Florida. This photo was taken by Iyana Paskova. I noticed in this photo that there's a lot of blue contrasted against this salmon color that we see as well, and a splash of yellow with those flowers. Nice touch. Now, the composition of this photo is quite imperfect. I personally would have loved to see it a bit to the right, perhaps, but still a very good photo. Context is all over the place in this photo. We have these people walking, touching each other, which shows that they are close and willing to touch each other in the midst of what's going on right now, where everybody's trying not to touch each other. We have the voting sign in the shot with the arrow pointing towards, an arrow pointing towards the building which they just came from. So the photo has a story built in, a timeline, if you will, built into it that is not actually present in the photo. What I mean is you can see them moving in your mind from the building to where they are near us now, and you can see where they're going past the camera. A minibus taxi driver during his journey in Kwathima, east of Johannesburg. This photo was taken by Thimba Hadibi. Another very tight focal length, which is a great way to focus on details in a very busy environment, which is why I tend to shoot at a 75mm focal length. On display throughout this photo collection is the two extreme ends of focal lengths. We have a wide focal length and a long focal length, and you can see how it affects an image. You can also see in this photo contextually how this thing is affecting normal people, and that's an important story to tell. A closed Apple store at the Oculus Shopping Center in New York City, a photo taken by Roy Rochlin, I believe. And this was actually my mom's favorite photo from the bunch. She thought it was interesting how the Apple store was empty, given that it's normally a very, very busy place. Okay, this is getting out of hand. I'm gonna close this window. Is that better? I got a streak on my face. Makes me sad. That shall have to do. Anyway, this photo has very creative framing. The photographer could have easily taken a photo of just the Apple store, but they decided to move back and get more of the environment in the frame. And once again, aesthetic charm is useful for telling a story. This very creative framing is not just pretty, it also provides useful context. We know that this Apple store is a very specific Apple store and a very iconic and normally busy part of New York City. Adam Elliott of the Bulldogs runs the ball during an NRL match between Canterbury Bulldogs and the North Queensland Cowboys at an empty ANZ Stadium in Sydney. Photo by Cameron Spencer. Great expressions, great separation between the individual players. They're not overlapping in a way that feels distracting. I love the use of compression here. You see something expected with something unexpected. Good formula for a powerful photo. A South Korean man disinfects an alley in Seoul. Photo taken by Chung Sung Jun, I believe. Here we have a normal street photo. This is something that you could find on Instagram routinely, except we have a guy walking down the street with a creepy smoke machine. Expected, unexpected. Children ride scooters across the nearly empty plaza at the Supreme Court in Washington. Photo by Tom Brenner. In this photo, we have a strong center, which we like to see. And I would say the strongest force in creating this strong sense of center is the arrow of the roof that meets directly in the middle of the frame. We have near perfect symmetry here and a group of three, but also a group of 2 and 1 separated by space, but also direction. One is pointing the opposite direction. The guy on the left is pointing the opposite direction of the people on the right. What I feel in this photo as I dig into it is a sense of history and humanity. History because we have this historical looking architecture and we have these people carved out of stone, so to speak, and humanity because we have these people carved out of stone. These are people who came before us, right? And then you have these kids who are young and one day they're going to grow up. And it just has a lot of historicity kind of in it. Is that a word? SF, a 16-year-old Greek graffiti artist spray paints a design on the roof of his apartment block in Athens. Photo taken by Thanasis Stavrakis. One thing I like about this photo is there's some interesting color matching happening between the clothing that the artist is wearing and the art. We have the white hood, for example, and other parts of the clothing are white, that matches the white mask and eyes. And we also have the brown jacket matching the skin tone of the person in the that. It demonstrates that this thing is quickly becoming pervasive in culture and in art. And finally, and I'm happy to wrap this up because I've been working hard on this thing and it's past dinner time and I'm ready to eat. A person walks along the Las Vegas Strip devoid of the usual crowds after casinos have been ordered to shut down. photo by John Loescher. This was very different than many of the photos in this video because it's rather abstract and it uses one color, technically two, but one color. And one color photos have an interesting effect. They're pleasing to us because they feel otherworldly. There's also quite a bit of pleasing negative space on the right, makes the photo more exciting, and cutting out context to an extreme degree can also be useful for a photo. In a lot of these photos we've seen, we are adding context. We are trying to smash as much context into them as possible to make the photo tell a more powerful story. But in this case, we're removing a tremendous amount of context in order to lean into the aesthetic side. And you pair that with the narrative that we're currently working with, and you have a very strong photo. In other words, this, like the previous one, is an average street photo. I mean, it's very well done, but it's something that you would see on a daily basis on Instagram, but the narrative, the added narrative, makes it stronger. Okay, that is it for this one. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. I'd be happy to engage with you. You can also find me on Instagram at JamesTheRed and at JamesTheRed on Twitter as well. If you have more COVID-19 related street photos, please feel free to share them with me. I'd be very interested in looking over them to possibly talk about them in an upcoming video. Links below to the article that I mentioned today, just link, I guess. And if you enjoyed this video, then hit the like button. And if you really enjoyed this video, if you hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Be healthy and have a good day.